So, welcome to Navigating the Unknown with Nikki. This is a podcast in collaboration with React19. And if you don't know about them, don't worry, I'm going to tell you all about it. But I am super excited to be able to create this partnership with them and bring this podcast to you because they are a wonderful organization that has helped so many out there with vaccine injury, including myself. And I thought, what better way than to start this first episode telling you a little bit about me, your host, and my story with vaccine injury, and how it led me into partnership with React19, and where it has inspired me right now for this mission of 2025 with my channel, this podcast, and what's going to happen with my relationship in React19, because I've got some big news you're not going to want to miss. Welcome to Navigating the Unknown with Nikki, a podcast in collaboration with React19. Together we share stories, support, and hope for those living with vaccine injury and chronic conditions. Welcome, and my name is Nikki Holland. And some of you all may know my story or may know me, but for everyone else, you're like, who is this lady and why is she behind this and what is her story? So I wanted to give you some background. If you can't tell from the accent, I live in Tennessee in a small rural town and have 3 teenagers now. So yes, my life is crazy, chaotic, and messy. But then you add on all these medical conditions that I've had to deal with since my vaccine injury, and it creates quite a struggle day to day. But leading up to this point, I had received my doctorate, was working as a physical therapist for 10 years, and yeah, I have those fancy DR in front of my name, but I like to keep it real, and for everyone other than my students in fancy situations, I'm just Nikki. But worked in physical therapy in the hospital setting, skilled nursing facility, outpatient, and home health, and even as a university professor. Worked with students, but during COVID time, I transitioned to full-time in the home health setting. And at this point, it was about 2021, the beginning of it, and the vaccines had been launched out, and I was hesitant. I really was about getting my vaccines. But we all make decisions, whether they're good or bad. We use the knowledge and the priorities that we have in our life, and we make that decision on what is best for us. And I am a strong advocate that you need to make the best decision for you. And for me, at that point, I didn't know what it was, honestly. And with that comes pros and cons, and of course, now consequences from the decision I made, and all sorts of regret and guilt. But kind of where my mind was at that point, to explain a little bit, was I felt pressure. I felt pressure from media, from the government, and yes, adults still have peer pressure, and we still experience this. And I was kind of under the influence of, hey, you're a healthcare provider. You should be setting the example, and you need to do your part. And hey, what if you go spread COVID to grandma and grandma ends up dying? Guess what? It's your fault. So you feel that. And then you also have the pressure of, that's financial security through your job. I had a job that I absolutely loved that was providing great financial stability for myself and my kids. And that scared me to death to be able to not have that. And it wasn't mandated at the time for my job, but it was something that did occur after all this happened, and I got a letter saying that if I wanted to return, I had to have my vaccine. But I was at the point, you have all this pressure, you've got the daggone media saying all these death tolls, that's playing a part of concern, and then you're one-on-one as a healthcare provider in the field, and you are seeing the effects of COVID. And I saw patients that were fine. I saw patients that were really sick. And sometimes there was no rhyme or reason. It didn't matter their age, it didn't matter their comorbidities. And these were the things that I was just seeing firsthand from experience. And I, I was a little scared. It kind of concerned me. And I thought, yeah, I'm nervous. They pushed this out way too fast. I know from my educational background that drug trials take for years and long periods of time to actually see what kind of effect it's going to have and what the side effects are. Not to mention, we have to have a larger population to be able to expand that to. So I was concerned, but also there was this voice in the back of my head that said, you've had other vaccines. The worst that happened is you maybe got a little sick, a little soreness, or they didn't work. So I thought, okay, there's a little bit more risk, I thought, with this one. But it all boiled down to that mental pressure and the financial security of my job, a job that I love, that kind of pushed it over to, I'm going to do my part and get the vaccine. And a lot of people, will shame you from both sides on that. The ones for and against the vaccine, the ones for say, hey, you should have known better, especially being a healthcare provider. You shouldn't have put money above health. And, all these factors were weighed out in my head. And unfortunately, life experience is the most brutal of teachers. And we all are in that boat that are vaccine injured, or we have loved ones that deal with those emotions day in and day out. We don't need people telling us, told you so, or telling us, hey, you should have listened to us. Yeah, we should have, but we're here. So I want to take this and tell you how it has impacted me, and through these podcasts to be able to give you tools and guidance to live the life that you have now. But that leads us to January 2021. That's when I took my first Moderna COVID vaccine. And right after that, just had some arm soreness, little fatigue, no big deal. I thought, okay, well, I survived, nothing crazy happened. But then I had my second one, February 2021. And that is when my life changed. I had that the next morning. I was fine. I even went golfing at an indoor golf facility, Top Golf. But later that evening, I started to feel really tired and got nauseous to the point that I was profusely vomiting. And this was about 36 hours after my second Moderna COVID vaccine. From there, that lasted for about a half a day. And then it went into, I was having some shortness of breath. I have history of asthma, and that has flared up in the past, but it had been under control for a long time. And I thought, well, maybe it's crazy weather with winter. Maybe it was a flare up. Didn't think anything about it. Took my inhalers, but it really wasn't helping, but it wasn't getting worse. So I thought, I can deal with this. And over the next few days, it got worse. I was seeing patients trying to push through it, but I remember that last patient was in a facility. I was all geared up with COVID gear. I had the whole double mask and face shield and goggles and gown and gloves. And between that and trying to walk this patient through their exercises, I became to the point where I was gasping, and ended up that day taking my stubborn butt to the hospital finally. And by the time I got to the hospital, I was in a pretty bad situation, breathing-wise. They admitted me. That would have been 5 days after my COVID vaccine. I was admitted to the hospital for respiratory failure. The doctors, knew that I had asthma and said, yeah, it could be it, but it's not presenting like asthma. Is it a reaction to something? And they asked me everything that I had been exposed to, and I told them the only thing different was my vaccine. And a lot of the doctors and nurses were saying, honestly, it's probably the vaccine, but don't know a lot about it right now. We're all kind of guinea pigs. We're seeing similar symptoms with respiratory, cardio, neuro stuff, and we're just going to treat your symptoms and what you're presenting with, and that's the respiratory issues. So they pumped me full of steroids, breathing treatments, had oxygen, everything, but I wasn't improving. And that's when 7 days after my vaccine, so I'd been in the hospital a couple of days, ended up on the ventilator for the first time. I had gotten to the point that I needed a machine to help me breathe, and was on the vent. And during this hospital stay, I came off the vent, went back on the vent 3 different times. But I remember after the second time coming off the ventilator, I remember thinking, I still feel short of breath, and I didn't feel right. Something was not normal, and any kind of asthma thing that I had in the past, this did not feel the same at all, and it wasn't responding the same way. And I can't explain the tiredness, the fatigue that I had. I'd never, ever experienced anything like it in my entire life. It literally was exhausting to just exist. And I knew that if I had to go back on that vent the third time, that I may not come off. I was laying there in bed in tears and struggling to breathe, knowing that it was progressively getting worse and it was leading to that third time on the vent, and thinking, I'm 36 years old. How did I find myself in this situation? Was it a bad decision that I made that landed me here that I could have prevented? But I did know one thing. I knew that if I didn't leave that hospital, my kids were not going to have a mom. And that absolutely tore me apart, that a decision that I had made was going to result in a consequence like that for them. And so I laid there and I thought, I need to record messages. So with what little breath I had, I pulled out my phone and I recorded messages to my kids, my loved ones, and even recorded a message that said, hey, if something happens to me, make this video known. Because I knew something was going on and I knew it resulted from that shot. And whatever happened to me, I didn't want to die in vanity, as far as I wanted my story to be told. And I wanted others that were in the same boat out there as I was to find the help that they needed.
I want this to be documented while I'm still with it, while I can still talk to myself. But I also love my kids. I love my life. I'm a healthcare provider. And I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to be damaged the rest of my life with something that was preventable. So please, if something happens to me, make this video known.
But I was scared. I was absolutely terrified. And when the time came that I was too exhausted. I couldn't breathe anymore. Like I said, it was an exhaustion that I'd never felt. And the struggle to breathe and use all those extra muscles to push that air in and out was just too much. And I literally knew what it felt like when people said, I just can't do it anymore. I need a rest. And the doctors were concerned with my breathing, and I went back on the ventilator for the third time. I remember nurse holding my hand right before I went out, and the respiratory therapist, I remember her saying and yelling to the doctor, we've got to get her out or she's gonna die. And that's the last thing I remember before I went on the vent. I woke up at a larger hospital. They flew me out, was on the ventilator. My lungs eventually started to clear up. During this time, they had tested me multiple times for COVID. Didn't have COVID. I never had symptoms of it until that point where I was starting to have trouble breathing. But they said when they did imaging, my lungs looked like I had COVID lung. but there was no sign of a COVID illness at all. And eventually my lungs started clearing up some. I was having more independence with breathing, so they were going to take me off the ventilator. But when they tried to take me off, they noticed that I was having laryngospasms. This was the first time that this had ever happened, and they said maybe it's multiple times on the vent, maybe that's causing it, maybe there's some damage. So they gave me some medicine to bring the inflammation and relax the spasms, and eventually they were able to pull the ventilator tube out, and I was breathing on my own. I still struggled to breathe, and they did an oxygen study, and I couldn't come off oxygen. And now I had to go home with oxygen. I remember right before I left, I was also having a lot of fatigue still and weakness. And I thought, okay, I've just been in the hospital, a lot of crazy sickness. This is just weakness. I'll bounce back from it. I was also having some leg pain, and I told them about it, and they're like, it's just probably because you haven't been moving. But in the back of my head, I thought, blood clot, blood clot. And I was so ready at that point. I was like, get me out. Let's blow this popsicle stand. I'm going home, because who wants to be in the hospital? I was ready to get home. And sure enough, I left too soon, because within those 3 days, I knew what was going on. I had blood clot. So I went to my primary care. They did discover that I had 2 blood clots in my legs, and was also starting to have more shortness of breath. And so 3 days after I was released, guess where I was? I was back on a helicopter to a larger hospital again. And they treated me with blood thinners, and was on blood thinners long term because of the blood clots. And stayed there for a little bit. Had to have some assistance with BiPAP and breathing and stuff, but got it under control once again, pumping me full of steroids. And then came home. But during all this time, there was some other things that were going on. Not only the breathing, the weakness, but I had developed neuropathy. I had never had neuropathy before. And when I say that, I mean numbness, tingling, burning in my legs, some in my hands, but mainly in my legs. And my muscles would start to twitch and have what they call fasciculation, so it would quiver. And then not only that, I would have major jerks in my legs. And the best I can relate this to is, when you start to fall asleep and your body falls asleep and you jerk, that force of a jerk, my leg would just randomly do that. It would just kick out. And it's something I couldn't control. And I thought, what in the world is going on? Once again, I kind of brushed it off. I said, I've just been through a lot. I've been bedbound in the hospital. It's just my body trying to readjust to blood flow, to healing, and mobility. Also, started having nausea. I had this at the very beginning, and it kind of went away. And then during that first hospitalization, nothing smelled good, tasted good, but of course I love to eat, so I would still eat, but it would make me feel better for like 5 or 10 minutes to eat, but then I would feel even worse, and my stomach ballooned out, and I literally looked like I was 8 months pregnant. And I remember at this point, the nausea had gotten so bad, and the abdominal distension, bloating was horrible. I was still on oxygen. My blood pressure was going up and down. My heart rate was going up and down. I was having dizziness. And the doctor said, hey, go to the ER. They need to do some imaging, make sure there's no bleeding, something going on that we're not seeing. So I went to the ER, and they did CT imaging, couldn't find anything. In fact, when I walked in, the admitting nurse was like, oh, are you in labor? I'm like, no. Like, when are you due? Like, I'm not due, because I looked that pregnant. And then for the doctor to say, hey, there's nothing on your imaging, nothing on the blood test, you're fine, go home. I'm like, your nurse out there just thought I was pregnant, and I'm definitely not pregnant. I've had a hysterectomy, so this would be a miracle. But what's wrong? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's just some gas or something, or indigestion. I'm like, no, this has been going on for weeks. So I went home. Nothing happened there. Ended up having some more symptoms, started having more difficulty breathing again, and noticed that I had some blood in my stool. So doctor said, go to the ER. So I went to the ER again, and they flew me out to a different hospital. At this point, they suspected a GI bleed and wanted to do a scope, a colonoscopy, and a EGD. So scope both sides, see where this GI bleed is. Well, they couldn't find it. They said it was a GI bleed, just couldn't find the source. But while in there on the procedural table, I started having difficulty breathing. And at that point, it ended me back on the ventilator for now the 4th time in just a couple months. And at this point, I started having what they said were laryngospasms. And so when I was able to get off the ventilator, able to breathe better for myself, have that clear airway, the doctor came in and said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is laryngospasms, maybe like some vocal cord dysfunction. So I want you to go see ENT and get evaluated. So went to see the ENT, and she did a scope, looked at my vocal cords, looked at everything because I had been intubated 4 times at that point. Everything was fine. Structurally, anatomically, nothing was going on, no scar tissue, no damage. So she gave me some exercises that I could try next time it happened and see if it helped relax those spasms. So did that. Tried them out a couple of times. I really didn't notice too much of a difference. It was getting worse. My legs were constantly felt like they were restless. They were moving. I still felt short of breath. I was doing all the PT that I knew in my head. I was even getting home health PT at the time. And I was getting slightly better, but I wasn't seeing significant improvements. Things that I thought that I should be responding better, I wasn't. And this was a great concern to me. And I was still struggling breathing. I went back to my pulmonologist, and my pulmonologist evaluated me, and he said, your breathing is horrible, and I'm admitting you to the hospital. And he admitted me directly to the critical care unit. And things got worse once again. And for now the 5th time in 3 months, I had to be intubated. At this point, I ended up being flown to a hospital, and this was one I hadn't been to, but it's supposed to be one of the best ones around, and a research hospital with many students in residency and teaching. And I thought, if anyone's going to find out what is going on and how to figure out how to treat me, this is going to be where it happens. So was on the ventilator there. Lungs started to clear up, started to be able to breathe more on my own, was ready to come off the vent, and now once again, I was having laryngospasms. And so my ENT, the one I saw previously, she actually worked there as well and came in and discussed what this means. She was going to take me to the operating room, sedate me, help try to kind of relax everything, and if all went well, I'd have the breathing tube removed and I'd be great. But she said there was the possibility that if they could not maintain that open airway, that it was at the point that it would be detrimental for me to stay intubated, and said that the only alternative that they would have would be a tracheostomy. And I thought, okay. And I thought that's a slim chance it'll be okay. Well, I woke up with a tube in my throat, and actually had that for 3 years. Just got it out last year. But yeah, all of that. And then I had a feeding tube at that point still. They had put in a feeding tube, and was having trouble eating. Couldn't eat at all at that point. Had lost tons of weight. My muscles had atrophied. more neuropathy, more numbness. My entire legs now were numb. They didn't feel like my own. And now, after I gotten off the vent, I noticed another symptom, and that was urinary. The nurse came in and said, hey, we took your catheter out a while back. Do you need to go? I'm like, no, I'm good. And they said, well, let's check. So they checked my bladder, and it was completely full. She said if I would have waited any longer, that I had the possibility of it bursting. And I couldn't even feel that I had to go to the bathroom. No sensation whatsoever. And then when I tried, I couldn't do it at all.
I don't want to break down, but I know that kiddos at home. So I'm going to work my butt off and do whatever is physically possibly inside of me to get back to the life of somewhat normal. Because that's all I can do.
So ended up having to leave with a catheter, a feeding tube, tracheostomy, went to rehab for a month to learn to care for and deal with all these new attachments, and hopefully get a little bit stronger so I could go home and take care of myself, much less exist and hopefully be able to take care of my kids some. This was from February to just the beginning of June, so a few months. And I know it's taken a long time to get here, and there was a lot that went on in just that short period of time, but I want to just summarize the rest of it because there are ups and downs. I'll share more videos about my story and go more in depth, but I'd get better, and then I'd get worse, and then it would cycle up, it would cycle down. And summer, after every thing kind of acutely was managed, I wasn't at risk for dying at that point. It was just uncomfortable and miserable. I went into this research mode. I was going to find, if they couldn't help me, I was going to find the answer. And I Googled, I searched, and guess what? Everything came up. CDC. There are no major side effects. Well, what if you do? What if you do? Then where do you go for answers? Who treats you? And so I searched and searched, and through that, I thought I'm going to share my story. Maybe others out there are experiencing the same thing or similar symptoms, because I wasn't finding it. And I did that. I shared a video story you can see on my page and go back and watch it. In August, I believe, of 21. At that point, I had people reaching out to me, and I'm not talking about a few, I'm talking about hundreds to eventually even thousands of reaching out and saying, hey, I've experienced something similar, or this happened to me, or there were parts that were very close in nature to my story. And we were all just out there, and we were wandering around trying to find connections, trying to find answers. Hey, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? And in doing so, we were trying to, communicate in this weird coded way, because we noticed that we were being shut down. We were being reprimanded on social media for just trying to connect with people. And this was scary in itself. And, through this whole journey, my eyes have been completely open to a world that I was so naive to, unfortunately. But through all this connection, I found React19. It was an organization, and they were helping people as far as trying to connect people with different groups and, provide, hey, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, hey, your story's similar, and those connections. And through that year of 2021, I was up and down. 2022, by the time it started, I was sick and tired of the medical system that I had been educated in, that I believed so wholeheartedly in. I thought in my mind to that point, they are the ones that recommended it. They are the ones that pushed it. They will see what's happening, and they'll come back to help us. They will help us when they figure out what's going on and how many it's affecting, because I was seeing it myself. But then from the censoring and the shaming, I realized that we were alone. It was us in this battle of two forces behind us, the anti-vaxxers and the pro-vaxxers, and here we were stuck in the middle, vaccine injured. And what do? Go ahead and argue, but we're dying. We are losing our lives. We need help, and no one was coming to help us. And those organizations that I thought had our backs as healthcare providers and as patients, they weren't coming to help. So I got frustrated. I had heard from some people I met that there were some doctors coming to our capital in Nashville, and I thought, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to introduce myself. These doctors have been treating people that have vaccine, and they were having some success. I wanted to see what their knowledge was. How can they help me? So I got in my car, drug my wheelchair, and I even remember, because you have to go up this crazy hill to get there, that this homeless man saw me struggling. All these people in suits and political people walked by me and ignored me completely. But this homeless man came up and said, "Hey, let me help you out." So he pushed me up, and thankfully for his help, I was able to get to that Capitol. And I rolled in there and introduced myself. And there was Dr. Malone, Dr. Cole, and Dr. Sidney, a local doctor. All of these doctors had basically been shamed and criticized for their acknowledgement of vaccine injury and treating patients and some of their alternative theories of treatment. And I was at the mercy of their hands. I needed their information now because that world of Western medicine wasn't helping me. I needed their insight, and they were willing to listen. And it was wonderful meeting them, connecting with them, and hearing their insight. I started going in the right direction. I thought, worst is behind me. It's going great. During this time, I also met Bree, who is one of the co-founders of React19. And she invited me out to come speak in LA. And I was like flabbergasted. I thought, this small town hick is going up to LA to talk in front of people. I hope I can do it. But went out there and I got to meet all these people face to face. And, to be able to share your story is huge. It's helping heal mentally, emotionally, to be able to say it, have people not judge you, people listen, people support you, and then you get to actually meet people that are in the same shoes as you, not just through the computer or social media, but I literally one-on-one conversations. We shared laughs, tears, we hugged, and that is so comforting and needed for everyone dealing with chronic conditions, vaccine injury, whatever hard times you're dealing with. That is a whole nother level of comfort and healing. And through that, with React19, I started to discover what they were. This organization was huge, and it was in the process of trying to help all those that were vaccine injured. It was started by two individuals that were vaccine injured that pretty much sat down and said, no one's helping us, the government's not going to help us, so we've got to help each other. And their crazy idea to start React19 is pretty much what led the frontier and led our path to be able to find resources and have advocacy for those vaccine injured like myself, because that doesn't exist out there. So if you're wondering who React19 is, because maybe you've never heard of them, well, you're missing out. You need to know about them, especially if you are vaccine injured or have a loved one that is. They offer a multitude of resources. So I want to show you just this quick little snip of video about them, who they are, but it doesn't even begin to touch base on everything that they can provide. But just watch this.
React19 is more than just a nonprofit. We are a united community passionately advocating for the COVID-19 vaccine injured. We're here to provide emotional and financial support to those individuals while fighting for their rights in the legal realm. Built by the injured for the injured, React19 is a movement of hope, resilience, and action. To join our mission, visit the link provided and learn how to get started. Your generosity can transform lives. Donate today and be a part of something powerful.
And that is React19 in a nutshell. Like I said, it doesn't even touch everything that they do. But it is a great organization that has helped so many people out there. Coming back to React19 and kind of where they fit into this whole picture, I had been introduced and learned a little bit about them, met the people, realized that it was a completely volunteer-run organization. They were out there campaigning and fundraising money for others that had vaccine injury. And everything that they received donation was just from everyday people and that wanted to support others and help us with medical bills, expenses, and things like that. And that was just absolutely amazing to see and be a part of. And they've given me tons of platforms to be able to share my story and advocate and meet people. And beyond that, they've even gone to the point as far as helping me with the care fund. And this is not me being special by any means. This is for everyone out there that is vaccine injured. And if you have medical bills, treatments, if you can't see the doctors, get the things that you need because they're not covered, and you need those resources, there is the ability to apply to this care fund, which, on a side note, they just hit that $1 million, and I said $1 million that they have given out to vaccine injured. And this is to help with all those expenses that I was talking about from vaccine injury. And every single cent of that was raised from donations. That far exceeds any kind of help that the government has provided or is even offering us, which is pretty much nothing. But everybody else, the thousands and thousands of people that have applied for assistance, for just help on everyday survival and treatments needed to exist, there hasn't been help out there for us. But React19, that is one of the things that they have done. And through that, I was able to get help with some of my medical bills and a wheelchair to provide more independence so I could be able to exist and do things that I needed to go to doctor's appointments, to take care of my kids, to go to their functions, to be a mom. And ultimately was able to have that help to find a neurologist that was a huge factor in the turning point in my medical journey. And with that, I got diagnosis. I found out, hey, why am I still having these flare up, flare down? Why am I not getting better? Why are all these systems failing? Why is my heart rate and blood pressure going crazy? Why am I having this weakness? I was able to find a neurologist through them, which they have a list of providers on their website. They are revamping, and those are the ones that are going to listen to you, are going to acknowledge vaccine injury, and going to give you an unbiased evaluation to help you. So check out their website if you need providers. And so that led me to the treatment that I'm receiving now. I'm getting infusions every few weeks of IVIG. And since then, I've been on the path of healing significantly. There are things that have helped along the way that I've done, by all means, that have contributed to this healing. But the most significant gains as far as healing and getting that inflammatory process under control so my body could actually heal some was the treatment that I received and the evaluation and diagnosis from a doctor that React19 helped me get in contact and helped me get to be seen. And because of that, if it wasn't for them, I truly believe between the mental aspect of having to deal with this, and if I were alone, and all the emotional side of that, along with not finding this doctor and getting to where I'm at with the treatment and my health, I would not be here today without React19. And because of that, they are an organization, and the people that I've met are near and dear to my heart. And I want to give back in the way that they have given me, and that so many out there have supported me. And so that leads me into my mission and the big news. I feel like through this whole process, I've lost my purpose, my identity. I feel like I'm no longer able to work as a physical therapist. What purpose do I have? I miss that part of being able to help people. It was a part of me. It was what drove and motivated me. And I thought, I've come up with this idea and some advice from others that I've taken that kind of put back there, but now just had the courage to start it up. I'm rebooting this channel, and I am sharing my wealth of knowledge from my background as a PT and my personal experience. And I was telling Bree, I was so excited. I was telling her all this, and some stuff came out of that conversation where she said, "Hey, what about this?" And I thought, I don't know, maybe. Well, which leads me to my big news. I have officially joined forces with React19, and I guess I have an official title now. I'm Community Outreach Officer. So what does that entail? Honestly, I'm not completely sure, but we're going to figure it out. But in the process of creating this space and this position, the goal is to provide outreach to you all, to a community that is in need. You know, they have their advocacy for patients. They have their advocacy legal and politically. They have their research that is going on constantly. They have their research database, their provider database. They have the care fund. But more on a personal level, the community outreach. How am I going to reach out to you personally and React to reach out to you personally to care for more holistically the person here, beyond that of all the technical side of vaccine injury, and what can we provide to you? And so I thought, that's great. That coincides with my mission and my drive already. So with React19, that is why this Navigating the Unknown podcast is in collaboration with React19. This is kind of my first little task and job into the community outreach position. And with that, I need ideas from you all. What are some topics that may help you, learn to deal with and manage and understand, or that you want to know more about, or that would be greater insight? If you have some of those ideas, put them in the comments below. It's going to help me and help React19 to be able to help you all better. Also, if you have some ideas beyond, these video content creation, things of community outreach and ideas that we can do as an organization as React19, please comment below. We will take all those ideas. We'll figure out what we can do, what's possible, and be able to hopefully provide some of those things to you, because that is our number one goal. Our number one goal is helping others with vaccine injury. And I can tell you, as a personal testament, React19 is an organization that has wonderful people that have hearts bigger than I've seen in any other person, that beyond their own struggles of dealing with injury and medical conditions, they're still reaching out to help people. And they inspire me to do this. And I hope together we can inspire you and hope provide you guidance and education, because education is empowering and huge in your healing journey. And hopefully be able to give you hope and inspiration no matter where you are in your healing journey. So if you like this podcast, hopefully you will see more. My goal is to have 1 or 2 a month. I'm still new. I'm still learning the whole process, the technical side, but that's my goal. If you subscribe, you'll get notified when I release a podcast, and you can check out in the meantime my other videos on the channel. I'm creating educational ones, and then also personal ones. That one I just launched right now is the things that they don't tell you about chronic illness, and how to, after that survival mode of, hey, don't die, what do I do now? because there's a whole secondary battle that goes on. Things like that. Check out my videos. You'll see some of those. Also, go to React, their website, their social medias. I'm going to put all the links below in the comments, in the descriptions, actually. And you'll be able to go to their website. You'll see all the resources that they have for you. Make sure that you connect with them, and they'll connect you with different people and friends. And they have a whole community of vaccine injured, over 30,000 that they support and advocate for. And so all of those details between my channel, React19, they're all going to be in the details below. If you also want to know more about how you could donate, or if there's somebody that wants to donate, the information is in the description below. And it is 100% of your donations go to help all those that are vaccine injured that apply to the Care Fund, to be able to help that and advocate for them. And if you want to hear more of these episodes, stay tuned. Like I said, subscribe, like, comment below, give me your ideas, thoughts, and I will see you in the next episode.